Hello friends, welcome to ArtScene, a monthly web TV series celebrating art in the Hudson Valley. I'm your host, Chronogram editor Brian Mahoney, here to bring you another episode of ArtScene, our monthly web TV series celebrating the visual arts in the Hudson Valley. Each month we bring you into artist studios, we visit museums, we talk about process with artists, and we visit historic places that have artistic significance. The series is produced by independent filmmaker Stephen Blauweiss. You know what Wayne Montecalvo is into? Cardboard. Corrugated cardboard. Found materials, humble materials, free materials, shaped into something that is obvious to see and yet mysterious in the same token.
When I first started using cardboard, it was really to make frames for some drawings I was doing. So I found some cardboard and just cut out shapes, and I kind of got interested or intrigued on how I could make a right angle or a curve or a certain shape out of cardboard and make a frame. So basically I was making these very crude drawings and these very crude frames, although they were kind of ornate, out of a very crude material. So that kind of led me to think of cardboard as something I could use in a lot of ways. That was kind of how I first started with cardboard. And the fact that it was, free. It was stuff that, you could find. So from there I started liking cardboard and Elmer's glue and masking tape a lot for a lot of work for a while. As far as finding the materials go, I've always liked to find things rather than buy them. For the pieces I make, I don't need brand new cardboard. I prefer that it was kind of banged up. Found material just has more character to it, so sometimes I can play off of that. If there's a certain part of a piece of an object, whether it's cardboard or wood or what have you. A lot of the pieces I was doing were video pieces, short vignettes, and I was also trying to push the tolerance of the viewer maybe to see how much they'll deal with. I've also done backgrounds of cityscapes that were similar, but of course the buildings were smaller and tighter, and I had more space to line up sort of a landscape of buildings and factories, that kind of thing. I think cardboard is an interesting material just because it's so cheap. When I use it, I like to kind of use that point about it. So tears and rips sort of inform the piece I'm going to make. If I'm doing building facades, sometimes I'll let a lot of the corrugated spots show through or some of the tears. A lot of time I found cardboard that was in the basement or laying in a puddle somewhere get some interesting stains, and I think it almost starts to look like a building. And just the cardboard itself, I like that it's corrugated, some of it is really thick. You can almost cut it with a bandsaw. I also like masking tape a lot. I've always been a fan of that. A lot of the time I'll let the masking tape show. I kind of like the idea of the process being obvious sometimes. It's almost like, if you see a magician do a trick, they never reveal the trick, but I think it's interesting to almost see the sides of something or the back of something or the way something is put together. So with cardboard pieces, I often like to see the mistakes and they become part of the piece. I also use wallpaper in a lot of pieces. On this piece I've also used the corrugated part of the cardboard because I just really like garage doors that roll up. I just think they look interesting, if you see them riding down a street. So I just thought that was an easy remedy to show that kind of a door. And also just to use the cardboard to make it do other things. I want to change the surface somehow, so if I'm making an inventive facade of a building, there's a lot of things that I'll leave showing so that it's not going to be a perfect looking building. It's obvious that it's made out of cardboard. It's not a real building. So I like to have tears show, edges show, staples, nails, screws, things like that. I think the idea of repeating a shape is interesting and it's fun for me to do. But I also started finding images online, printing them out and sticking them down with wallpaper paste as if they were signs or even posters stuck to the side of a building. I kind of think of them almost more as paintings, so they kind of have that feel. They can be just hung flat on a wall and they work fine. Well, it's not that, I'm like a found object artist. I like that something has a previous life maybe and you can reuse it somehow. I just use things that I can find that, have a life to them already, have a character about them. That's kind of interesting to me. The artwork isn't about recycling. I think recycling is great, everyone should, but it's not making that statement, I suppose. I don't think it's about being perfect or having really clean lines or having, things line up exactly the way you think they should. So I like to leave that door open so that things don't work the way it should, because I'll learn more that way, for one thing, and it usually comes out better.
Have you heard of the Women's Studio Workshop in Rosendale? If not, shame on you. The leading women's art facility in the country has been attracting artists from around the world for over 40 years.
In 1974, Women's Studio Workshop was founded, and we moved here in 1983, and we've been programming from this space ever since and are in the midst of expanding our facilities as well. Primarily, we work with artists. They come from all over the world to come to work in Rosendale in these studios for a month or 2 months on special projects. So an artist will come, they have an idea, and spend the better part of 2 months making a fabulous hand-printed piece that we distribute for them. Part of the reason that we're particularly good at artist books is we have a lot of facilities, and that's probably the defining feature of the workshop. We have etching, and we have letterpress printing, we have hand paper making, we grow our own fiber for making paper, we have a special art farm project, we have silkscreen printing, we have a dark room, and we have ceramics. But that's just a piece of what we do. We also have artists that are coming just to work in the studio. Someone who's making a portfolio of prints that they are preparing for an exhibition, or someone who's coming to work on fabric because they're making some kind of performance event that requires costuming. One of the things that we've started this year was to do public arts programming, and our first artist in residence for that was Pat Olesko. She works in large scale, and she worked with us for 10 weeks and produced costuming and extravaganza events that culminated in a series of work that was displayed on the rail trail. During the year, we have classes in ceramics. There's 1 or 2 classes pretty much going on all the time. Now we're getting ready for Chili Bowl Fiesta, which is the end of February. We have a young ceramic artist to work helping make chili bowls. We'll have about 900 bowls. We've been doing that for about 15 years. It's a great event. It's a lot of fun. You come in and you buy a handmade bowl, and then you fill it up with one of our chilies that's been donated and have fun. Another big program of the workshop that we've been doing for years and years, 20 plus, is working with kids from the public schools, primarily Kingston schools. Kids come for a month at a time. They work all day in the studio, so 1 whole day is in the etching studio, 1 whole day is in paper making, 1 whole day is in silkscreen. We work with a team of artists that come as teachers, and we always have visiting artists alongside them. They're going to be working for a book arts expert. She will be making an artist's books alongside working with the kids. We like to say to the kids, you're working as artists with artists. So when they come into this space, we expect them to learn about the equipment, be respectful of it, know that other adult artists are coming in to work in the space as well, and they go well. It's pretty fun. What we do, we teach. We have a deep skill set in these things, but the artists bring new tricks, new ideas, different media, different kinds of materials, and we can expand more broadly even than we already have in terms of technology and capacity. We have become the largest publisher of hand-printed, limited edition artist books in the country. So an artist will come here from wherever, and they will hand-print an edition, and we will work with them to develop a structure and a binding. Can be traditional, can be non-traditional, could include plastic. We have a book that has a clay enclosure. Sometimes it's accordion, sometimes it folds out. Our goal is to help artists get to figure out how to realize their idea. That's the advantage of having all this equipment. So, somebody comes with an idea but in skills in one studio, but really the better way to do it is in another studio. We can help them do that, making their project a little bit nicer, a little bit more finesse, a little bit easier to produce sometimes. So we made a big commitment to putting every page of every book, of artist book, online. An essential piece of our mission is to get the work of women artists out to a broader public and become part of the critical conversation. You can't do that if you have 50 books and they're in 50 private libraries. So we made a commitment early on to photograph every page of every book to a readable degree. People don't understand how unique this community is. Lots of places have beautiful mountains. Lots of places have big rivers. No place has the density of fabulous art available to everyone. We don't have to go any place to find interesting art. It's right here. And we're inviting artists all the time from all over the world who want to come here and work. There's no reason to leave home.
Werner Pfeiffer is into books, building them, destroying them, creating new forms. We visit him in his studio to see him at work.
The image on this month's Chronogram is called Abracadabra. Abracadabra is a book on magic, and in this case magic about a Dutch artist who was a writer, artist, printer, and he worked very much with typograms, pictures that are made out of letter forms. I interpreted his work in this piece and I spelled out the word abracadabra, and it's a series of pages that play with type and put it on flexagons, which is a folding system that becomes a very sort of architectural surprise thing, because you turn it and it goes in 3 or 4 phases and it always comes back to itself. So I started doing books on 2 levels. One as a book object, where I take books itself and I censor them. I paint them white and they become icons that are silenced and sealed. And I use nails and rope and screws and completely make sure that there's no identity left in these items. So what I'm doing, I'm taking this cultural icon book and reissuing them in a kind of a lighthearted, ironic way by getting rid of their content. It becomes kind of a symbol for an end of something and maybe the beginning of something new. So it's a raw material for me. It's like stone or like a piece of wood that you sculpt, that you do something. I just take books. And it's paper and it's pliable. You can saw it, you can drill it, you can do a lot of things with it. The first thing I do is I usually get rid of its content, of its identity. So it's sterile. And that's part of it, you know. And the big piece in that series is called Gallows. It has about 7 columns of books hanging. It's like bodies that have been executed. And that's sort of the statement about censorship. Other pieces in that series are a piece called Delicate Balance, which is a series of books balanced on a shovel. So it's just the edge of the shovel that gives it the stability. Another piece in that series is called Limited Access, which uses screws and wooden latches that makes it impossible to open the books. The book is not only under duress from censors, but also from technology. You know, we're going into a different direction with the book. And that sort of made it kind of a double image, kind of a double purpose for this book. So I take books that have done their purpose and they become really just little sculptures. I make it into a nonsensical, kind of lighthearted, ironic thing that points into a different direction. I think that's where the book kind of struggles with at this point. As a kind of an echo of my sort of destroying books, I'm also building books. And these are the artist books, where I begin from scratch and I simply think of ideas. How could a book survive in this environment? The majority of the younger generation, they read mostly from the screen, and the book becomes kind of an odd thing for them. So I'm building books that have possibility to point into a different direction. And they are primarily done in limited editions, and I do them with the concept that everybody who reads them uses the book not only visually, but you touch it, you work with it, you assemble it, you take it down. When you put a piece from a sketch into reality, you look for the format, you look for the expression that is the most strongest. I think that's the nice thing in the arts when you have multiple technologies and techniques available. You can really look for the best possible expression that serves the idea and the piece to the utmost.
Meet Danielle Bliss and Joe Venditti of Wishbone Letterpress, young pioneers of an old art form.
Letterpress is a very old form of printmaking. It was invented in like 1451. Traditionally, Letterpress wasn't made for getting an impression in the paper, which is now the big feature that everyone wants. We've learned printing from a few different teachers who, you know, they don't want the impression, like they're purists, and that's not like how it was supposed to be.
Traditionally, they wanted no impression. It was called a kiss impression. You couldn't tell that it was letterpress printed, but now it's seeing the impression is the only way that you can distinguish it from anything else. Yeah, well, it's not like you just put the paper like in the machine and just turn the button on and it just works all by itself. Like, you literally have to stand here or stand there or stand there. You're either hand feeding it or you're watching the press as it's feeding itself. There has to be a human there at all times. So it is very time intensive, very labor intensive, and very stressful because a lot of times it's just stuff does not work out. You know, and you got a deadline and it's got to get done, and we'll be here like 1 o'clock in the morning trying to get something finished for somebody for the next day, and you go through way more paper than you should have. And the paper is not cheap. That's what we print from, are photopolymer plates. Once they're stuck to an aluminum base, they're type high. Normal lead type is already type high, so you can have whatever you want.
Once we get it on press, we have to set the roller height, so it's just inking the top parts of the plate and not the back of the plate. The press setup is kind of a big process with getting it aligned, getting it square on the press so it's printing on the piece of paper the same way every time, getting the roller height right, getting the packing right so there's enough impression in the paper. Depending on how long the print run is, that's really the bulk of the time, is getting it set up. And then because we're using really old machines, over the print run they can change, and you might have to reset the rollers, and you have to re-ink the press as you go and make sure that you have enough ink on the press or not too much. The presses don't actually use that much electricity either, so even though it is an old machine, it's semi-energy efficient.
And the paper cutter is hand-powered.
Yes, the paper cutter is hand-powered.
Uses zero electricity. It is not easy. So anybody that thinks it's easy, come on over and hang out here for a day.
We hope you enjoyed the show. Tune in each month for new episodes featuring our incredibly talented and diverse artistic community. And remember, buy art from local artists.